Lesson 9.4, Equivalent Fractions. Your objective for this lesson is to learn how to write and identify equivalent fractions. First, we're going to learn how you can use pictures to understand what equivalent fractions are. As you can see on the left, I have made a certain type of pie chart, and it's divided into thirds. You can see that there are actually 3 parts to this chart. 1, 2, and 3. So your denominator is going to be 3. The part that's shaded is just only one part, so this fraction would be called 1/3. On the right-hand side, we can see the exact same picture, however, it's divided up into many more parts. This time, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces, and out of those 6 pieces, 2 are shaded. Looking at this picture, we can see that the fraction 1/3 is actually the same fraction as 2/6. There are only just more parts being used. Here's another picture we can use to understand equivalent fractions. On the left-hand side, there are 4 pieces to the whole. And out of those 4 pieces or parts, 2 are shaded. On the right side, we have the exact same picture, but we're using more pieces or parts. This time we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And out of the 8 pieces, 4 are shaded. If you were to look carefully, we could also say an equivalent fraction for 2/4 or 4/8 would be 1/2. These are all equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions have the same proportions. Using what we knew from the picture before, I know that 1/2 is the same as 1/4. Another equivalent fraction is 3/6. You can see at the bottom and the top that we're just multiplying by the same number to get a fraction. So 1/2 to get to 2/4 is just multiplying the top and the bottom by 2. To get 1/2 to 3/6, we would be multiplying the top and the bottom by 3. Trying to think of some more equivalent fractions in this set, we could also multiply the top and the bottom of 1/2 by 4. And if we were to do that, then our next fraction in this pattern would become 4/8. And if we were to multiply 1/2 by 5, multiplying the top by 5 and the bottom by 5, it would become 5/10. Therefore, I know that both 4/8 and 5/10 also have 1/2 as an equivalent fraction. Here's another pattern that we can use to find some more equivalent fractions. For 3/4 to get to 6/8, all I had to do was multiply the top by 2 and the bottom by 2. One thing to know about equivalent fractions is whatever you multiply the numerator by, you must also multiply the denominator by to get an equivalent fraction. In order for 2/3 to become 9/12, all I had to do was multiply the top by 3, and then I have to do the same thing to the bottom to find the equivalent fraction of 9/12. If I wanted to go ahead and figure out what would be another equivalent fraction to put in this set, I first need to look at my bottom number, and then I just need to multiply both the top and the bottom by the same number. Now, in this case, the last one, 9/12, we multiplied both the top and the bottom by 3. This time I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 4 to find the answer of 12/16. Finally, to find my last number, I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 5. And if I do that correctly, I should get the answer 15/20. All fractions in this set are equivalent to 3/4. They are also all equivalent to each other. Let's do a couple more examples of equivalent fractions. In this question above, I wrote the number 5/10. If someone were to ask you to write an equivalent fraction for 5/10, all you would need to do is multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. It doesn't matter what number you choose. If they don't specify, any number would work. For example, in 5/10, I could multiply both the top and the bottom number by 3 to get the answer of 15/30. 15/30 is an equivalent fraction of 5/10. I could also do any number of answers, such as 10/20 or 20/40. The number down below, I'm going to go ahead and find an equivalent fraction that is actually smaller than the number that I gave you. Looking at the number 6/8, I can also find a number that fits both into 6 and into 8. We call this the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor of 6 and 8 is the number 2. 2 is a number that I know is a factor of both 6 and 8. So I'm going to divide 6 by 2 to get a numerator of 3, and I'm going to divide 8 by 2 to get a numerator of 4. Using this method, I can also state that 6/8 has an equivalent fraction of 3/4. If I had wanted to, I could have done a bigger fraction for 6/8 to find an equivalent fraction for it as well. However, this time I wanted you to notice that sometimes an equivalent fraction can be smaller than the one that the person might give to you to solve. Therefore, the fraction can be simplified. Just to test our knowledge, I want you to write an equivalent fraction for 10/12 that is smaller than 10/12. So we're going to find the greatest common factor of 10 and 12. This is the biggest number that can fit into both 10 and 12. There are a couple ways that you can do this. The first thing you can do is go ahead and do a rainbow for both numbers. If I were doing a rainbow for 10, I know that 1 and 10 are factors, and 2 and 5 are factors. If I were to do a rainbow for 12, I know 1 and 12 are factors, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. The greatest common factor that both of these numbers have in common is 2. So I'm going to divide my numerator by 2 and my denominator by 2. If I do this correctly, my answer should be 5/6. 10/12 and 5/6 are equivalent fractions. This time I just want you to write an equivalent fraction for 1/5. You'll find that it's actually already simplified. We can't make it any smaller. So I want you to go ahead and make it an equivalent fraction that is a little bit larger than 1/5. You can choose any type of number to multiply by your numerator and your denominator. For my example, I'm just going to go ahead and multiply the numerator and the denominator by the number 2. You could have multiplied them by 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 10 or 100, to get an equivalent fraction. If I were just multiplying my numerator and denominator by 2, my answer would be 2/10. Sometimes in a math problem, you might be asked to solve for x to make an equivalent fraction. This means that part of the fraction has already been done for you. To solve this question, I always check to see what information they gave us. They gave us the number 6 and the number 12. In order for 6 to become 12, you would have to multiply the denominator by 2. Well, to find an equivalent fraction, whatever you do by the bottom, you must also do by the top. So if 6 times 2 is equaling 12, I should multiply my numerator of 1 by 2 to find the numerator of my second question. So 1 times 2 is 2. Therefore, I know that in this problem, x must also equal 2. Therefore, 1/6 is the same or has an equivalent fraction of 2/12. Let's try another problem. This one says 3/5 equal 9 over x. I have to figure out what they were multiplying 3 by to get to 9. Hopefully you know that 3 times 3 equals 9. So whatever I do by the top, I must also do to the bottom. Therefore, I would be figuring out that 5 times 3 equals 15. Therefore, x equals 15. And that would be your answer. Practice problem number 1. Write an equivalent fraction. Pause right now. There are many answers you could get for this equation. Most simplistic would be multiplying both the top and the bottom by the number 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. If I were to multiply the top and the bottom by 2, my answer would be 4/10. You could also multiply the top and the bottom by any number you choose, such as 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. However, your answer is going to be a little bit different than 4/10. Practice problem number 2. Solve for x to make an equivalent fraction. Feel free to pause right now. In this question, I have to look at the information of what I know. I know that 3 times 2 equals 6. So, I know that some number being multiplied by 2 is equaling 4. This question is a little bit more tricky than those that I've given you in the past because we're not multiplying this 4 by 2. Instead, we're trying to figure out what is x, or what is a number that can be multiplied by 2 to equal 4. In this case, the answer is going to be 2. 2 can be multiplied by x in order to equal 4. So x equals 2. Please feel free to circle the smiley face on how well you understand.